Okay, yeah, I didn't like the way they had him because he looked like a reject from like some other movie that I didn't like that probably you haven't seen, so I'm not gonna spoil that. But he was bad.
Is it Spider-Man XXX? Is that the one you're talking about?
No. Okay, anything by Axel Braun, he is a king in our geek culture. Okay, brother is king. He's a legend. Axel Braun is our boy, so we don't rip on Axel. Okay, he's our boy.
Captain Marvel, good.
Yeah,
he's making a new one, and it's the PS5 suit, and he even cast a dude who kind of looks like one of the versions of Peter Parker.
Axel is our boy.
Hold on, guys, hold on. We have the man himself, Ryan Kinnell, RK Outpost, with us. I need some clapping from Gary's thing. The legend is here. How's it going, man?
Hey.
What's up, Ryan? What's up, brother?
What's going on, guys? Good to see you. Good to see you. I'm glad I could stop by. You guys talking about Spider-Man still?
We are. We're trying to stay spoiler-free for Isaac here. We haven't seen it.
Isaac hasn't seen it, so yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, that makes it tough.
Okay. I know, right?
It was good. It was good.
Pretender, which I guess that just means it's an obstacle for you. But it's okay. I'm an easygoing guy. I already know Venom's not in it. How worse can it get?
Oh, we told you that. We told you that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The youth pastor from my church ruined it for me at a Christmas party last night.
I didn't know youth pastors were allowed to lie.
To be fair, I didn't watch any of the end credits.
Oh, that's important. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I liked it. It's the first MCU movie I've been to in a theater since Endgame. Frankly, because everything else just hasn't interested me at all, including the second Spider-Man movie. I didn't go see that one in theaters either. So I thought it was good. I really think that they did a lot of good things. They gave the audience what they wanted. There was a lot of nostalgia, maybe a little too much at times. But for the most part, I thought it was good. Some problems with the plot for me, like the whole motivation and what happens when, at the end, like what happens when they have to kind of finally solve it. And like what happens to everybody after that point. I don't know. I think they should have discussed the ramifications. But other than that, you're seeing there's no pandemic bullshit when it comes to these theaters. That's a false narrative.
There was one thing that you mentioned on Friday Night Tights that I wanted to elaborate on, and I'm going to really try to stay away from spoilers here, but you mentioned the repercussions for certain characters after the finale. And there was one repercussion that I saw that I haven't seen anybody else mention, is that the certain thing that Peter decides to do at the very end that saves the day doesn't have implications beyond just the ones you were talking about, because those the villains were there because they knew who Peter Parker or who Spider-Man was. And that has implications to like the big thing with Ned and MJ at the end. That applies to the other characters as well. And no one's talked about how that ruins their lives just as much as the stuff you talked about.
The way that I interpret that is that they're gonna forget him. I don't think that affects any other universes.
Well, they were only coming there because they knew Spider-Man was Peter Parker. So if that applied in that situation, wouldn't it apply in this situation?
No, so they won't forget Spider-Man.
Right. But
I can't say anything else.
Right, but the personal connections that, I mean, the one person, it's not really going to affect him, but the other one mentioned that he had a stable life to a certain extent, and that might be gone as well, just the same as MJ's stable life is gone, Michelle's.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, I don't think that in some of the other people we're talking about, I don't think anyone's going to forget them. That's not my interpretation of it. My interpretation would just be like what they decided to do to those villains. Now, I guess, does that spell the kind of forget me spell? Does that apply to people that are there at that time? Does that apply to all the villains that are there? I don't think so. I think it was almost like two different things happening when they sent them back. But I don't know. I haven't really thought about that before.
All right, fuck. Finally, some goddamn spoilers. All right, anyone in the chat who gives a fuck for the ones who are still here? Yeah, we're going into spoilers. So, it told me an answer back. In case you were wondering.
All this dialogue sucked.
I didn't like Electro. The reason I didn't like him was because he was just Jamie Foxx. And like in Amazing Spider-Man 2, his character is literally never sounds like that ever.
Right.
Like, he's different. I mean, he's supposed to be different, right? But I thought that was a very strange approach to it, where he's like, "Oh, I was different on this world, and I never look like this." It's like, what? Because you're on this, you got brought into this world, so now you're just like a suave black man instead of a nerd. Okay.
Yeah. I definitely think it was a big improvement, but the bar was so low that I focused on the other villains more than him. But it was better, in my opinion, than Amazing Spider-Man 2.
So there's a part where people think is woke. I was talking to Jed earlier about
Oh, this is great.
And okay, so it's an expectations versus a realization joke. He's like, "You're from Queens, so and so." So I don't even remember the whole
You
line.
help poor people.
Right? I thought you were black. Right? It was to set up Miles Morales. Right?
Yeah.
And Andrew Garfield's just like, "Sorry, like,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm not black." Right? And like people are like, "Oh, that's woke." Right?
Oh yeah, he's not apologizing. Now
He's
the
not
fact
apologizing for being white. Yeah.
the fact that line is in there at all is one of about I think the two or three things you can point to this movie and be like, oh, there's a drop of woke in there. I just thought it was funny because they literally like Miles Morales has been relegated to Black Spider-Man, a throwaway mention.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Somewhere in some world there's got to be a Black Spider-Man. Trying to wink at the camera.
All right, yeah.
I was gonna be so pissed if they would have brought Miles in. I was like, Miles can go fuck off. Like literally.
It would have been cool if they brought in a Miles right there and he just swung by and like smacked Jamie Foxx with his feet or something. But no, so the joke I was saying, because like someone was saying earlier that it was that it's like really woke, and I was like, whatever you say, dude, whatever you say. But it's like an expectation versus reality joke, right?
Mhm.
So it's like a girl goes to sleep with a black guy because she thinks he's got this huge dick, and then when she fucks him, he has a 3 or 4 inch dick, and she's like, I thought you had a big dick, and he's like, sorry. Like that's it. That's basically it. Like, sorry, I didn't live up to your expectations.
I think the purpose for that line is like clearly like agenda driven to have Jamie Foxx talk about a Black Spider-Man, but Andrew Garfield's response is not at all.
Mhm.
Yeah, the sorry, yeah, that was a little weird. But we actually
I
have
laughed. That's one of the only jokes I laughed at.
really. Oh, I laughed a lot.
Because he's like, I thought you were black, and Andrew Garfield's just like, sorry, and I'm just like, he's like,
I thought Andrew Garfield stole the show, man. I thought
Oh,
he was
yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
after putting all three in a movie, like I've been saying, I think Tom Holland is actually like the better actor out of all of them.
Mhm.
And then I saw Andrew Garfield next to all of them, and I was like, okay, hands down, he's the king of all the Spider-Mans. Fuck you, Toby. I've never liked you. Tom Holland, you've always had shitty writing, but you did a
Well,
good job with the shitty writing that they gave you.
Toby's Spider-Man is the best Spider-Man.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
absolutely.
He has the best script, but he
Yeah,
wasn't
he's the best Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield, I agree with you, but you can only judge the movie on what it is. And Andrew Garfield's 2 movies weren't very good, but he is clearly the most talented actor of all of them. And when you got them all there and you had a good, a decent script and dialogue, he shined. He carried it when he was in there. And especially how self-deprecating he was about his own Spider-Man.
I'm Spider-Man 3.
I killed my girlfriend.
Oh my god, that crying session where they're like, "Oh yeah, Uncle Ben died. Oh, I killed my girlfriend. Oh yeah, my Aunt May died." Like they were like just all just like, oh, like I was like, "Oh my
I
god."
thought that was pretty good. For me, Gary mentioned it a little bit that Andrew Garfield has a soft spot in my heart because of his appearance in Doctor Who. Most of you probably aren't a fan of that show, but for him, he did an incredible performance in the episodes that he were in. So I always
He was.
I tried really hard to like the Tasman films. I couldn't, and I really appreciated this movie for giving him the moment he was due for the talent that he has. Speaking, going back a little bit to the villains, I had a little bit of an issue with Sandman's motivation. I don't know if Ryan can speak to this better than I can, like why he was a villain per se, especially because like at the beginning of the movie or the first half, 3/4, he was like, I'm going to help these guys. I just want to get back to my daughter. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, they're going that way. I'm bad now. That's kind of how I felt with it. Like I liked that he was an antagonistic at the end because he was a good villain, the best of Spider-Man 3 with all its issues. But I kind of had an issue with why he was doing it because with the villains doing what they were doing, it was diametrically opposed with going back to their own universes like he wanted because he didn't die fighting Spider-Man. So he had no ulterior motive in this whole situation.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree that like Sandman was like one of the best parts of that movie, and then it was just kind of weird how they kind of shoehorn things in, like, oh, you get to do this. He goes, no, I'm going to take this off and go more. I was like, okay, like,
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that in the beginning, he's like, he thinks the Spider-Man, so he's like, oh, okay, I'm going to help. And then I think once he realized that 1, it's not his Spider-Man, and 2, they're trapping these people, his motivations were very different, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so he didn't trust anything that they were going to do.
And he even says that in the movie.
Yeah, he says that. But I do kind of agree that all he wanted to do was go back. Right? He just wanted to go back and see his daughter. So it was strange, unless he felt like if he went back the way they wanted him to go back, he would die kind of thing. You know, then maybe he doesn't want to. That's the only thing I can think, but maybe I missed something. Maybe
Yeah.
just a line of
I think a
dialogue.
few throwaway lines would have cleared that up for me, especially because he was my favorite part of Spider-Man 3. He was really great. And I've actually seen
Was it
conflicting
emo Peter
sources
Parker?
online. Did Thomas Hayden Church actually come back for the role? Because when he was Sam throughout the first 3 quarters, most of it, I thought they just recast him and tried to hide it. But online, they can't see
I
it.
thought the voice sounded kind of weird, and they had somebody else do some part, and they brought him back for the end where they transformed him back. So
Well, he was wearing the same shirt, so I thought he was CGI from Spider-Man 3. But online, I actually found conflicting articles. One said, yeah, he was in it, and the other one's like, no, they recreated him with another actor. And Thomas Hayden Church, I didn't find anything from him specifically. But he was one of my biggest issues with the film beyond the whole, did the other Peter Parkers, did their loved ones forget them, was him and his motivation. Because he was one of my favorite, actually, of all 3 Sam Raimi films, he was one of my favorite parts. So to see him come back in such a, in my perspective at least, a 2-dimensional way, just I'm bad, no reason why, it was kind of an issue for me.
yeah, I agree with you. It's just and I will agree with Ryan said they kind of overloaded on the member berry sometimes. Like they're like, hey, you remember that? Hey, I remember. You know, like I was just like, oh, come on.
He was in it merely because he was the best part of Spider-Man 3, and then they passed that.
I think that it was him in it, but I guess I'm not sure.
Yeah, like IMDb wasn't sure. I couldn't find any articles. It was just he was Sam the whole time, which wasn't a part of his character in Spider-Man 3. Like he could have a human-looking form. So when I saw that throughout the first hour and a half, I'm like, oh, they just recast him. That's cool. I mean, they did recast him. Yeah, that's what I assumed when I saw the movie. But when I looked up online, there was some contradiction.
But then there was the geek part of my mind. I was like, okay, when he came to this universe, it screwed him up, so he had to be sand all the time. So I was like, okay.
They got to explain that though.
Yeah,
But I guess, but considering Jamie Foxx did say powers different here, there could be an explanation.
That's what I was thinking.
Potentially,
But
I don't remember them saying anything though. So they have an out, but they didn't use it.
Yeah, they did.
And because he's one of the only other villains that has a universe-related power, like Doc Ock, his power's not going to change. Green Goblin's power's not going to change. But him and Electro, they're the only 2 that would have a reason for their powers to change. So I guess I can see that, but I think it's still more in the realm of headcanon than what was actually explicit.
I mean, is that scene where we actually see him at the end when he gets transformed back? Is that a scene from Spider-Man 3 at all?
I assumed it was because he was wearing the same shirt.
I thought that was when he was dying, right?
They would, I guess I would assume they would keep him in the same clothing because it was from before they died. So
Right before they died, yeah.
I did have a thought. Like I did think because we know Disney's done this in the past where they go back to past movies, they take things out and then they put it in the newer movies. So we've seen them do that before.
Yeah, maybe they didn't think through it. They were just like, oh, he was the best villain of the 3 in Spider-Man 3, so not much beyond that. But I would have appreciated from a writer's perspective that they would have explained that a little bit more. His character arc is the most important thing to me, and he had nothing, at least in the way of character whatsoever. He just kind of like, oh, I don't want to be violent, and then all of a sudden he's giant and violent. And I didn't correlate the 2 scenarios from him versus the apartment versus the finale. I didn't see the connection there, and that's where my issue derives from.
do you think there's any chance we get an Amazing Spider-Man 3 after this and Andrew Garfield's reception?
It depends on how much control Marvel versus Sony has. I know it's like 95% Sony, but I see
Marvel doesn't have shit. Like they can't stop him from doing anything.
It's all Sony.
I see Sony doing it. I definitely see Sony doing it, especially after the reception of him. Like you were saying, he was the standout in the movie. I can see them doing it, especially way more than Spider-Man 3, like you guys were talking about Friday Night Lights. That Tobey Maguire definitely felt like he had a sufficient close, maybe not a great close, but he had a close, whereas Andrew Garfield never did. So I can see Sony trying to bring it back, at least see what people think.
Well, Spider-Man 3 was whatever, but then he had like his finality is in this one. You know what I mean? Where he's now the old wise Peter Parker who taught Tom Holland what it means to be Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And did his thing, and now he's just going back to be with his family. So his thing's kind of wrapped, in my opinion. I don't want to see Spider-Man 4.
No.
So I would like to see Amazing Spider-Man 3 though.
I definitely would, especially from my Doctor Who perspective.
Yeah, he did say when you're talking about that, he goes, when they were all talking about who they fought in the past, he goes, yeah, I fought this guy that was in a rhino suit that kind of looked cheap and stuff, and there's he's nothing big. That's one of my lame villains. And he goes, well, and then he's like, well, I fought people in space and stuff. He goes, man, I wish I would have fought people.
I wish I would have fought an alien.
Yeah. All right, sorry to interrupt you guys, but Ryan's actually got to head out. So if you got to plug anything, Ryan, definitely let us know. And if what you think about the adaptation of No Way Home versus the run in the comics that Gary was talking about, the run with Michael J. Straczynski, that was actually not that good for most people. Like, what do you think about all that as you go?
Yeah, as far as the comic, I never read the comics that this is adapted from. Overall, for me, I thought the movie was good. I think I gave it an 8 coming out of the theater. I would retroactively bring that down to a 7.5. You know, kind of getting past, you know, I try not to let my emotions really affect me, but you can't deny seeing it in a crowded theater and the reactions everybody had and the way you feel leaving. But I think 7.5 is a solid number. Best movie for me since Infinity War from the MCU. And it was very telling that this is a Sony product, not a Disney MCU, just because of the identity politics, honestly. And I think when you look at the Venom movies that have come out, now you're starting to see a pattern when Sony has Marvel versus when Disney has it. I do think Marvel or Venom 2 is absolute dog shit, but it's not woke. You know, there's no identity politics in it. That's clearly not like a factor for them.
I saw 10 minutes of that movie and wanted to cry of what they did to Carnage.
Yeah, it's not good. Carnage isn't good. But yeah, other than that, I would recommend everybody going to see it. And Disney only gets 25% of the profit, which is a good thing. Thank you for having me, man, though. Congrats on the new channel. Everybody, if you're watching, subscribe.
I appreciate that. And Ryan, you're going live tomorrow, correct, for your weekly stream?
Yep, doing my weekly stream. I think I'm doing a little member thing tonight, just a real chill, unlisted stream thing, and a little bit tonight. But yeah, tomorrow 6:30 Eastern, I'll be live on my main channel.
All right, Ryan, if I'm not there,
No worries, man. It'll be chill. So, all right, guys, thanks for having me. I'll talk to you later.
All right, later, brother.
If you like what I do here, I want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you. Check out my book series, Odyssey of Phoenix, a mythological epic driven by philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Book 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.